After a wild 2 days in Mexico, which included an incredible fan event, food poisoning, and then getting beaten up by lucha libre wrestlers, it was time to head to our final country on the International Stadium Tour. Last but certainly not least, it was time to head to Brazil. Brazil was one of, if not the place I was the most excited to visit. It would be the home to the Green Bay Packers Week 1 matchup against the Eagles, the first NFL game in South America. It was also my first time in South America, and over the years, more and more Brazilian fans had found the channel, and so I was excited to finally be able to showcase some of the most passionate fans in the world. But first, it was time for a 9-hour flight, where I still had food poisoning, and I still do 4 days later. I haven't eaten a real meal since Wednesday, but that's not important right now. We landed in Sao Paulo and we had some time before the fan event at O'Malley's, so we were able to explore bits of this massive city. How massive? Well, over 22 million people call Sao Paulo home. Now, before we headed out, it's important to note that visiting Brazil was not without controversy. Before we got here, similar to various cities during 30 and 30, there were countless comments about the dangers I would face there, especially if I wore green. Now, considering I was a Packers fan and Brazil is home to one of the biggest Packers fan bases in the world, if this was true, it would have been a bit difficult to 1, host a game here between 2 green teams, and 2, not be able to represent my favorite team, the Packers. You see, the NFL game this September is being played at Arena Corinthians, which is home to the Corinthians, a Brazilian football team with a die-hard fan base whose colors are black and white. They have a rivalry with the Palmeiras, and just like we saw in each country on this tour, these rivalries can get intense and even sometimes violent. Palmeiras wear green, so during a game at Arena Corinthians, wearing green is not such a great idea. Arena Corinthians even tried to get their pitch's color changed to be not green, though they were unsuccessful. Well, this hatred of the color green made its way through the internet, and after a few rounds of telephone, we got articles and podcasts saying that the color green was banned in Sao Paulo, or that local gangs would target folks wearing green. Well, thankfully, months ago, I spoke to people who actually live in Sao Paulo, and found out that's not true. It's true that Corinthians fans hate the color green with a lot more intensity than I hate Vikings purple, but outside of a game at Arena Corinthians, that's not a problem. How do I know? Because I wore green as soon as I left the hotel. And guess what? Other people were wearing the forbidden color as well. Everywhere I looked, people were risking their lives by wearing green. Even the electronic person who lived in the crosswalk signs dared to defy the dangers that awaited those who wore it. Oh look, I'm wearing green in Sao Paulo, and I'm not dead. Crazy. Now, you might be wondering about September's game between the Eagles and the Packers, which is held at Arena Corinthians. And if you attended the game, would you be allowed to wear green? Well, here's Claudio, the PR executive at the stadium, with that answer. Tell me about the green. Is it okay to wear it here?
Yeah, for sure. We don't have any problems wearing green. Corinthians want to welcome everybody comfortably, and we are very happy to receive you here with this visit. So come to Brazil, you can wear green with no problem.
So yeah, if you're coming to Sao Paulo this September, feel free to wear green. After walking around the city for a bit, it was time to head to O'Malley's for the fan event, and it was electric. Let's go, baby, how we doing? There were Packers groups like Cheeseheads Brazil and Packers Brazil, and fans representing teams from all over the league, all without a single game being played on their continent. And even though there hasn't been a game, there are still running jokes that exist within Brazil about the NFL. For example, I was gifted a Goiás jersey, which is a running joke because their logo looks so similar to the Packers. So it was amazing just to learn about this, and nearly every single reply on Twitter was about the Green Bay Goiás. The passion from these fans was off the chart. They were so excited to be there, celebrating with other fans, and beyond excited to have an NFL game being played in their city. It was difficult not to be ecstatic for them, even being 1 day removed from food poisoning. So while I couldn't eat or drink anything but water, this fan event was one of the best.
The game in Brazil has been talked about for quite some time. That's going to be in Rio or São Paulo, and it's finally here. And they couldn't pick 2 better teams to play, Eagles and Packers. That's going to be a blast.
Are you going to try to go to the game?
Absolutely. My credit card will cry later.
Even though your teams aren't playing in Brazil this year, Are you guys still pretty excited for the game?
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
I will try to get tickets, but they're probably gonna be expensive.
Of course, I'm trying to also get the tickets. I'm also trying to get the dog pound mask so I can at least spark at the game.
The sports growing up here, like the flag football and American football as well, there's a lot of leagues and a lot of interest in growing up here. So I think with the game here, it'll just get better.
Well, you got NFL fans all around the world, language, culture, that's no barrier for the love of the game. And I think as NFL grows internationally, you're gonna have more passion, people around the country, different cultures, but all related to the games.
After the event, Johnny Pastor and I walked the city at night back to our hotel, taking in the sights of this vast metropolis. And for me, just appreciating the fact that I was here.
Left the camera at the bar and still there when we got back. Let's go, baby.
Whoa, are you wearing green out here?
At nighttime? Oh my God, you know where we are? It's at that point that I think it's important to mention that Sao Paulo, just like any city we have visited on this trip or during 30 and 30, is not perfect. In a city filled with 22 million people, there are going to be issues. Growing up outside New York City, I'd be ignorant to suggest otherwise. However, that ignorance goes both ways, because while it's important to be smart and not put yourself at any risk, I will also say that just like any city we have visited on this tour or last summer, I never once felt unsafe. The next morning, it was time to head to Arena Corinthians, and with 22 million people, oh yeah, there was traffic. But after about an hour, we arrived at the stadium, and it was beyond impressive. We were met by Claudio and Bucci, a diehard fan who was wearing a Pittsburgh Steelers shirt, and even brought the tradition of the terrible towel all the way down to Sao Paulo as he waves it around during each game.
I swing the top. Chimo, 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 cha, 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 cha.
Bucci walked us through this stunning stadium, telling us all about the history and significance of each memento. This stadium has 6 floors, which includes an actual university that 200 students attend, as well as a pool where fans could even watch the game poolside. Which now makes it the second stadium we have visited that has a pool, which is not a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. As we walked through the halls, his love of the team was apparent, but it was clear that he's just one of millions. For example, in 2012, to support their team, over 30,000 Corinthians fans flew 35 hours to watch their team play in Japan. If that isn't dedication, I don't know what is. It's their insane love of the team that is written in the very walls of their stadium. They know they're crazy about Corinthians, and they embrace every second of it. We were shown the trophies that are one of the highlights of the daily tours they give to fans. There's even spaces where fans can practice their penalty kicks and can even host birthday parties. This stadium blew me away. When we got to the pitch, I was presented with a custom Tom Grossi Corinthians kit, an incredible act of kindness, and they even put the 15 on it. And as fate would have it, Alexandre, a fan who attended last night's fan event, informed me that the number design on this jersey was actually done by his friend and student, Julia. Just another amazing highlight from an amazing trip. For Claudio and Bucci, they were both so excited for me to be in Brazil, to see this beautiful stadium, and I can tell you that even in the few hours I was there, I cannot wait to see the Packers play here. Not just for the team, but for the fans. The fans that have loved this team and sport for years, even when it was impossible for them to watch. I obviously am biased here, but for Packers fans living here in Brazil to finally see their team, it's going to be an event and an experience that I can't wait for them to witness. Because just like in every other country we have visited on this trip, nearly every Packers fan I have spoken to could relate to the Packers. The team isn't owned by a billionaire, it's owned by the fans. I mean, heck, we even own a piece of the team. #stock. The Packers are Green Bay, and Green Bay is the Packers. It's a commonality that has reached different languages, cultures, and countries. And personally, it just makes me even more proud to be a fan of the team that I have loved since I was 6 years old. After the stadium tour, it was time to head to the local park because the night prior, we hit our fundraising goal. We raised $100,000 for St. Jude.
It's a little past 6 o'clock here in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and we just hit 100,000 freaking fracking dollars donated to St. Jude. Ladies and gentlemen, we hit our goal, baby. Let's go! Let's go.
Yes, sir.
Let's go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now I just gotta stop pooping.
And so, as promised, I had to score a goal in Brazil. During the fan meetup, Pastor gathered some phone numbers and quickly a group chat was formed. We planned the time and the place, and fans came from all over Sao Paulo to play a pickup game of soccer. We even had complete strangers join in, which made it even better. The fields were occupied, so of course, if you've ever played sports when you were younger, you've had this experience. We made our own. With backpacks and bags, we made our goals, and we played. Let's do this.
There it is, yes.
Go! Have a rip, Tommy!
Have a rip, Tommy! Have a rip, Tommy!
Yes!
And after I sent one into the crossbar, or a paper bag, I got another opportunity and scored a goal in Brazil. The first time in 17 years I had scored a goal.
That's it! We scored a goal in Brazil. Play the kids.
And the crowd was cheering right there.
That's it. The crowd went wild.
The game continued for a bit after that, and before we had to catch our flight, we of course had to play some American football. Because just like in 30 and 30, I had to let Sao Paulo know who wide receiver 1 was.
So I'm gonna burn him. It's this, and I'm gonna run straight up the middle. I'll be about to throw my hand up.
Oh, a little giant section out there.
Put! Let's go, baby!
Go! Come on! Blue 42!
It's like a brace, man.
It was legitimately the perfect way to end our visit to Brazil.
They let me down. My puppies let me down.
After the game, I signed the cleats and ball that I had just bought to raise money for the recent floods in Sao Paulo. Unfortunately, Brazilian fans were region locked from donating on YouTube to our campaign, so we did one better and tried to help those who needed it most within their own city. After that, we headed to the airport, said our goodbyes to Pastor, an absolute legend on this trip, and headed on one final flight. Home. When we started this trip, I honestly didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if fans would show up to the fan events or if people would support the fundraiser. I have never taken any of this for granted, and so when they showed up in London and I jumped off a stadium, I didn't know if I was even going to be able to use the footage. But of course, once again, this community showed up. You showed up when we raised $20,000 the first day, and you showed up in droves at the fan event, where I got to meet so many of you and hear your stories about how you fell in love with this amazing game. And even though our time in London or any country we went to wasn't long, to kick off this international stadium tour here was the perfect start. It continued in Munich, where we met incredible people like Peter, Bettina, and Alex, whose kindness knew no bounds, even as they waited for us to arrive in the pouring rain. That night's fan event was one of the most wild I had ever been a part of, going nearly 6.5 hours and capped off with a whole lot of German beer. The next day, even after just an hour of sleep, Frankfurt did not disappoint. We met Patrick and Cornelia as they guided us around a magnificent stadium and shared their passion for both European and American football. The fan event that night blew away all my expectations as it went 6 hours again, even though the Champions League final was on in every bar around the corner. Then there was Madrid, a 2-day celebration. To be able to experience Real Madrid's parade in the square and their celebration inside their magnificent stadium was truly one of the greatest experiences of my life. And it was made even better by having one of their biggest supporters by our side, Pastor. At the fan event, I got to meet some incredible people as we talked about our love for the game for 4 hours in the basement of a beautiful pub. And when you thought the day was over, we pulled an all-nighter in the basement of our hotel because of the kindness of people like Paula, who didn't charge us to use their room, just so we didn't disturb any other guests while we were streaming. Not like that happened in London or anything. We then flew 12 hours across the Atlantic and landed in Mexico City, where I got to see a lucha show live in person, drink mezcal, and celebrate with amazing fans. And yes, feel Montezuma's revenge, and also the chop of a lucha libre wrestler. All of this made for a perfect trip. It wasn't always easy, sleep was almost never had, but every second of it, even getting sick, I loved, because it was part of the story. The story of a guy in his basement who was a school teacher and started a podcast 9 years ago because he loved the Green Bay Packers and NFL football. The guy who took a risk and left his safe job to make silly NFL videos, and then took an even bigger risk 2 years later and spent his house money to travel all across the United States to every NFL stadium to raise as much money as he possibly could for St. Jude. And now, in 2024, I got the chance to travel around the world and meet some of the greatest and most passionate fans I have ever met. And of course, we did it all for the kids. In under 3 years, we have raised over $900,000 for amazing charities. And by the end of the year, we will have raised over $1 million. It's an incredible accomplishment and a testament to this community. Every dollar raised was done by ordinary people looking to just do a little chaotic good. I fell in love with the Packers and this sport when I was 6 years old. And now, 27 years later, and a continent away, this chapter ends the same way the entire story started. With a game.
Live it up. Oh! You gotta live up to that reputation, baby. Come on, we got a reputation uphold here.